وعلى آله وأصحابه ومن سار على نهجه واتبع هداه إلى يوم الدين وسلم تسليما كثيرا. اللهم اجعل اجتماعنا هذا اجتماعا مباركا. اللهم وفقنا لما تحب وترضى. اللهم وفقنا لكل الخير. اللهم وفقنا لما فيه صلاح المجتمع والفرد، صلاح المسلمين وصلاح الأمة وغير المسلمين. اللهم وفقنا لما تحب وترضى. ربي وان بجالة ما كجلتو ربي والغي بركاها قدو والغي خيرين نما علم نماتي في ست أرقمت ربنا قدو. وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه.
Today we come together on the same agenda as we've had past year and a half, which is Wednesday night, once a month, educational night, to educate the community, more importantly to remind the community of the struggles that are going on right now and that were going on then and that continue to go on. And inshallah, we want to shed a little bit of light on education, prevention, and inshallah, finding a healing source for the community wherever is possible, inshallah. So today's topic that we will try to cover as best as we possibly can, inshallah, is early detection and prevention, as opposed to dealing with the person after the fact that they've already dealt with mental health or they're already battling substance abuse. And I like to actually even change that phrase in the middle of this conversation later on, as opposed to substance abuse. I believe people abuse themselves, because you can't really abuse the substance. Substance is it's a compound. It's something that cannot feel or hurt or get destroyed. But once we use these compounds and these drugs, we end up hurting ourselves and abusing ourselves. So early detection is basically something that parents, neighbors, community advocates such as myself, and educators need to look out. And when we mean early detection, it's basically seeing the signs of someone who may or may not be struggling with finding a purpose in life. Because if the child or the young person in the community doesn't have a sense of direction, whether it's education, religion, sports, or something that's the main focal point of their life, there's a good chance they're going to go either the right by direction and discipline of their family, or they're going to go left, subhanallah, with shaitan and everything that he's got ready. I'd like to give you guys an idea. If you watch middle-class American family and society, as well as those who've got money and have got well-educated individuals, from the time the baby is over the age of 5, they have things for them to do. They're called extracurricular activities. Not just school, not just family life, but outside of those things for them to do, whether it's soccer, baseball, hockey, basketball, swimming lessons. They even get them immersed in different languages. Now, if you look at the society in America, which is not very well off, let's say poverty level, people who just are not well to do or are not properly educated, you'll find their kids doing the opposite, which is after they come home from school, they have nothing to do. More than likely, the mom and the dad are both at work. If you look at those individuals who don't come from an affluent home or middle-class America, their kids don't have a lot of extracurricular activities. Both parents are at work. When they get out of school, they're left to themselves. They don't go to swimming lessons. They don't go to basketball, hockey, baseball. They're stuck to their own vices in the street with other kids who are in the same predicament. So the differences are very clear. Is early detection is based on just what we want for our children, which is the best. So if we want the best for our children, we have to be able to put in the effort required, whether it's time, energy, or resources, to get our children busy and doing positive things. So they don't have time to meet strangers in the street. They don't have time to hang out with the kids who don't have any parents at home guiding them properly. Because those kids are just like your kids. If you're not there to guide them, they're going to be misguided kids. So I think personally, for somebody who's alhamdulillah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has been able to save from substance abuse himself, and growing up in this country without a mom and a dad. That's exactly how I got into alcoholism. I didn't have a mom to fear at home. I didn't have my father. So when I come home, my uncle's at work, my grandma's old, I'm running outside. I'm figuring out what I can get, what I can use my time with. And that's when I learned about bad stuff and the bad guys and the bad girls and stuff like that. The communities that have been in this country's, a couple of thousand years old, they've learned from early mistakes. They know what their Achilles heel is. Achilles heel is the tendon right on the back of our feet. If somebody cuts that, the human being cannot walk. It's not repairable. So the American society at an early age figured out alcohol is their biggest Achilles heel. So that's why they had prohibition. I don't know if you guys know about that. So when they figured out this is the thing that's the most lethal to their society, they started to say, okay, let's bring back alcohol, but let's start getting lock cabinets. Because if we don't overdose, our children for sure will, because we've built a tolerance, So these communities and these societies have built a strong tolerance for these type of problems that they are well aware of in their communities. So for us, we have to be able to do the exact same thing. We have to identify what the problem is and find at least, if not the perfect solution, I don't think there is such a thing, but at least a manageable solution. So to kind of summarize, and I'll let my brother Maurice over here take us into the next phase of what it looks like prevention on his side and early detection. But recognizing our children, I'll use myself as an example one last time. If my grandmother was a little bit more educated, she would have known at 6th grade and 7th grade, I was not going to a paid, school activity after school. I was hanging out in the park, and the park is not a safe place for kids. She would have stopped me and brought me home. But if my uncle knew that I was playing basketball with some guys who were into gang activities, he wouldn't have let me go to that park. But these two individuals in my family, they didn't have the time to investigate. My uncle's working. My grandma's, she's got a handicapped leg. She can't even get down the stairs by herself. So what I noticed is if they would have recognized these signs of the people that I was hanging around with and the environment we lived in, they would have put a stop to it. But because they did not know, and I'm a young kid growing up in a society, this is 1989, 1990. The drugs back then were crack cocaine. I think you can relate, Brother Maurice. And these small little signs of just knowing your environment, knowing your community, knowing what's going on, and sharing with each other can save hundreds, if not thousands of lives. So, inshallah, in conclusion, if we can, look at our children in our own house or just within our own perimeters of our own community, you can see a lot of kids who are not doing good things with their time. If you see the same 2-3 kids or 5, if you always see the same group of kids hanging around outside, not doing something productive, they're not fully engaged in the sport, they're not having a study session, they're not in the gym playing basketball, these are the kids who need somebody to reach out to them so that they're not hanging around with kids who are curious about all the negative things that they see, because Shaitan, it whispers to everyone, young, old, especially the young, because they're impressionable. If Shaitan gets a hold of someone who's under the age of 10 or 12, and he gets a grip on them, subhanAllah, he may never let go. So the early year, you can educate the kids about what's right and wrong and the right way to spend your time and the wrong way to avoid spending your time. We can save generations, inshallah. So,
yeah. Hi, everyone. My name is Maurice. I like Jamal said, I work with him at Twin Cities Health, right? And we often see guys come in, struggling with substance abuse problems, right? Whether it's drinking, whether it's drugs, whether it's behavior, most of it is related to what they define as co-occurring, So like there's a brain disease that's connected to why people continuously do self-destructive patterns of behavior, right? When they engage in substance use, right? It's a brain, it's a disease of the brain, man, and it's really complex, right? It's really difficult, right, to address, right? Like most of us look at this in a kind of a humanistic side, right? But it's more spiritual than it is, the human component. So it takes a spiritual entity to kind of really confront this problem, right? Just like I said, it's more spiritual in nature. And most people that have success with recovering from substance use, right? Addiction, mental health, right? Like it's the spiritual component that they tap into. You know what I mean? And I think that's what it takes to address it, right? Like sometimes it takes a village to raise a child. It takes all of us, right? Like being kind, loving, and caring to somebody that we know, right, is kind of engaging in self-destructive behavior, patterns of using, you know what I mean, illicit use, identifying, their problem, just being kind, loving, and caring, right? And a lot of times, right, we're scared to approach this individual. So just reaching out to somebody else, letting them know that he does exist, letting some person of power just kind of step in, just kind of really kind of help with your problem. Like this is a way of kind of like stepping in and intervening. Most people of authority, a lot of advocates, they're familiar with interventions and way of kind of helping somebody struggling with substance use kind of navigate, right, or get them connected, find the resources, right. They have multiple treatment facilities. The one thing I like about our particular facility is that we kind of like we address the whole of a person, right? Like we're not trying to look at them physically, but more spiritual than anything. And just like I said, like, for example, the way you kind of navigated it was more spiritual, and it's been more spiritual for me, and any other, there's like this, like you said before, right? This problem has been going on for generations, like if it wasn't alcohol, it was, drugs. And so we've always dealt with this problem. But there are people who successfully navigate it, right? Who get over it, get through it. But most of them, they tap into the spiritual component, right? Like I said, because it's disease, right? It's so hard to navigate, right? Like it takes the spiritual component. And for us to think that, right, like we wouldn't be victims, like my grandkid wouldn't do it, or my son wouldn't do it, that's, to me, that's kind of being naive, right? Like you really, because like, kids, they associate with each other, you know what I mean? And a lot of times, man, that peer pressure kind of really entices kids to you, because I have teenagers too, right? But like, so I worry about them all the time, right? And that, I try to tell them to avoid risk factors, right? Like when you see somebody struggling with some type of lack of care or, abandonment, or, mental health issues or emotional problems, right? Be afraid to get them some help, you know what I mean? Before they resort to drinking drugs or violence as a way of dealing with their problems, right? A lot of kids too, right? Don't have the nourishment at home. You know what I mean? Like parents are so busy working, trying to keep up with the Joneses, pay the bills, provide food on the table, and so the kid, is neglected or doesn't feel that love, right? That he longed for, and so he'll look for love in the streets. And when we're young, right? Like we typically get into this, we buy into the Western philosophy of this individualism, right? This self-centered approach to life. You know what I mean? And I'm finding our younger generation has started to buy more and more into that, right? That me complex, right? But traditionally speaking, right, we as a people, right, like we're more aligned with the we. We understand the power of us together. Like there's power in numbers. You know what I mean? And so like I personally think, bringing that component, right, like to address substance use, right, and really understand, right, like for whatever reason, because kids, like they get in that me complex for a number of different reasons. You know what I mean? But as long as we instill in them, right, that that your family, your community, and people in general really care. You know what I mean? But it's still when we kind of like, you know, stiff arm him or pay him no attention, he kind of isolates. You know what I mean? And isolation is not good because we're spiritual creatures, right? We understand the connection between each other. You know what I mean? Some of us do value life, right? And so kids not really understanding this, right? Like you really don't come into that mindset until you get a little bit older and you start to appreciate the teachers and the policemen for intervening, or your mentors or educators, right? And you start to appreciate your team around you, or the community for helping out, right? For giving you lunches and that type of deal. But that's the spiritual side that really kind of we need to really address this problem, right? Like we need to kind of be more collective and more together, man. Like when we see somebody in this isolated state, somebody isolating too long, the greatest aspiration into the human heart is to help somebody. Not only does that help them feel good, but it helps us feel good. You know what I mean? It helps the individual feel good.
Is wrong if you didn't tell them at 8 years old or 9 years old or 10 years old. Habrit, I understand.
Can I answer that question?
Just the whole issue of Minneapolis being a hub of drug abuse.
Right.
So the problem is we have such a big community. When you think about African Americans, when you think about East African communities, you think about Latinos, we're all here. We're all here. This is the hub, like Habrir said. The problem is we don't have youth ambassadors that actually, like what she said, that actually mean what they say. And the ones that do are basically filtered amongst those that lie behind a rhetoric. Like the rhetoric is, we will come to the community, we will do this, but when it comes to putting 10 toes down, nothing is actually happening. I like her idea where you have to have people who actually mean what they say and say what they do.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you need to change. Doesn't come easily. It doesn't come overnight.
No.
The other thing is we can't affect change just by having the same faces come through. We have to call upon our community and say, this is an issue and we have to all come in numbers. And I know it's a disadvantage because some people work at night, some people have kids, but what is important? Are you fighting for your future? Are you fighting for your children's future? Or are you just, we've passed the point of having conversations. This is a point of action. And like she said, if we don't lobby for ourselves, nobody's going to lobby for us, right? So what is our issue? Our issue is we do have the resources. We have people who we have elected who look like us, who speak our languages, who come from our communities, and they're not within the community. We don't see them. They come out when they want something from us. So we have to have that scratch my back, I'll scratch your back mentality. Our community needs something. So in order for us to continue having you and having you as representatives, or having you as community organizations, or having you as community leaders, you have to effect the change that we want. But how do we do that? We have to involve the youth. The youth are the ones that know the root cause of the issues. We as adults, we as parents, we as older generations, we wouldn't really know what these kids are impacted by when they're at school, when they're out in the neighborhood. They can try to talk to us to a minimum, but if we don't hang with them, we don't know what they're doing.
Yeah, that's absolutely.
I mean? So you have to effect change by inviting these youths, and not just a one-time thing. It has to be a continuous. Create safety nets, create safe spaces, create organizations, create events, bring them to the table, entice them with the things that they look up to.
use the same resources and tools that they use to bring them to the table. Once you do that, once you create those hard lines where you say, okay, this is what we're going to do, and this is project phase A, phase B, phase C. If we create those and we project those and we come up with a timeline, in a year, maybe we'll do much changes than we are doing right now. I think I love the idea of us talking, but there's too many organizations, doing multiple things. Why can't we bring those organizations together and do one thing? Because it does not serve the status quo to do multiple things when the issue is one. The issue is opioid. Let's start with that. Then let's move to, okay, what's going on with the encampment? Let's start, move into phases. But if you're all capturing different aspects of the same thing that's hurting the community, you're not fixing the illness. You're just putting Band-Aids.
Exactly.
Okay, and the Band-Aid will come off because the wound will fester. So, like she said, find like-minded people, find organizations, but also basically put a needle in people's asses and say, hey, you need me as much as I need you. So what are we going to do together? You want another year as a person in civil service? I need X, Y, and Z. How can we help each other? How can we make our community safe? And I think this is a time of action. We're past the point of talking. We've talked. Let's do something about it.